Now, like a lot of people, I was surprised to hear, back at this year's Star Wars Celebration, that not only would Season 4 of Rebels be the show's last, but that it would also only be 16 episodes long. And then on top of that curious announcement, recently we were given the rather odd release schedule for the last season, and it turns out that the show is being moved to Mondays, or very late Sundays depending on where you live, because the first airing will actually be at 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time, which for me will actually be 11:30 p.m. on Sunday. And then there will be subsequent airings throughout the day, along with it also being available on the Disney XD app. Furthermore, at least for the first few weeks, they're going to be doubling up on the episodes and giving us 2 each Monday, which by no means I'm complaining about, but all this does cause me, and probably you, to ask one very simple question. What the hell's going on with this show? Because it seems like Disney and Lucasfilm are trying to bring it to a conclusion, in more ways than one, as quickly as they possibly can. Which is odd because the show seems to be very popular with fans, and at least from my point of view, it felt like it was really starting to get rolling as we draw ever closer to the time of Rogue One and A New Hope. Which means there are no doubt a lot of stories that will be left untold as they try to have it seamlessly flow right into Rogue One. And it's not that I think it won't do that, flow well into Rogue One I mean, it's that I wonder why you cancel a show that has been well received by the fans and then shorten its final season, not only in terms of number of episodes, but also in terms of how fast you're going to air them. Now, the obvious answer is they have something else, something big and special planned on the animation front, and Dave Filoni, who is in charge of all things animation these days at Lucasfilm, has said as much, that they have big plans for the future that they just can't tell us about yet. But the thing is, whatever's coming has to be closer to being upon us than we even imagine. Because the likely reason why you shorten the final season of Rebels to 16 episodes is because you're in a hurry to get started on something else. And the likely reason why you then rush out that last season and get it over and done with as quickly as possible is because you want to get it out of the way of that something else. And sure, of course, there could be other reasons to treat the last season of the show almost like an afterthought, but I think the simplest answer is something else is ready to take its place, something they have high hopes for of being even more popular, and something that would have more to do with their new sequel trilogy. Because, as I've said before, once The Last Jedi is out and many of the mysteries surrounding this new time period are revealed, such as just what Luke Skywalker has been up to for 30 years, the focus of all the other sources of canon, including the animated shows, will shift from the time period of the original trilogy and into the Disney era of Star Wars, as I like to call it anyway, which in my book is everything that takes place after Return of the Jedi. And I can't imagine there'd be many shows more popular than one that would revolve mainly around the adventures of Luke Skywalker during that 30-year gap between episodes 6 and 7, especially if Mark Hamill himself lent his voice to the show, which I could certainly see him doing, because, in case you don't know, he's been the voice of the Joker in most animated Batman shows and movies for many years now. Again, I just can't see another reason why you'd rush a popular show like Rebels to its conclusion. Especially not after what they did to the Clone Wars, which was to cancel the show during production, which means there ended up being episodes they were working on that never got finished, and many more that had been written that never got any further than that. And all this means, of course, that the show didn't have a proper ending. Now sure, we've been promised a proper ending to Rebels, and I'm sure we'll get one, because I think Dave Filoni himself, who has expressed his disappointment about not being able to finish the Clone Wars properly, may have personally led a fan riot if we didn't get one now for Rebels. But I still can't help but feel a little disappointed about the general way the show is being handled here at the end. Because they really are making it feel a little bit like an afterthought, or like something they just want to get out of the way. And sure, if whatever comes next is fantastic, I'll likely forgive and forget, but still, this is an odd way to end such a popular show. And of course, I haven't seen the final ending of the show yet, so in a few months' time I may say, you know what, they did end it perfectly. And at the same time, I am of course excited for what comes next, especially if my prediction is right and we do get the adventures of Luke Skywalker. But it still feels like a lot of potential stories and character appearances are being missed. And just for the fun of it, I'll give you my top 5 characters I would have loved to have seen in Season 4 of Rebels or beyond, but now probably won't because the show is ending. First up would be Grand Admiral Sloan, who actually first appeared in the book A New Dawn, which was the first book in the new canon, and was actually the story of how Kanan and Hera met. Furthermore, she was one of the main characters in the recent Aftermath series, and we now know, thanks to the book Phasma, she is still very much active in the time of the sequel trilogy as a Grand Admiral in the First Order, and I think seeing her, or even just having her referenced, would be very cool. Even better, however, is if she could have been an adversary for the Ghost Crew for a few episodes, especially if, and this is a big if, she somehow makes an appearance in the sequel trilogy at some point. Either way, having her show up in an episode or two of Rebels could be such a great nod to the other sources of canon, and one of the more popular characters from those other sources. Next up would be Iden Versio, or her father Admiral Garrick Versio, both of which first appeared in the book Battlefront 2 Infernal Squadron, and who will also be appearing in the game Battlefront 2. And just like with Sloan, even a small part or a subtle reference would have been a cool nod to the other sources of canon to remind us everything is happening in the same galaxy. The third character I'd put on this list would be Boba Fett, simply because it's Boba Fett. And I think there could have been an opportunity to have either the whole Ghost Crew, or maybe just Sabine, who used to be a bounty hunter, encounter him. And two possibilities that could be interesting, and the first one was actually an idea of my fiance's, was if she was responsible for painting all of, or even just some of his armor. The other idea, which also wasn't mine, but was rather in a comment to one of my videos, and I apologize but I don't remember who came up with it, is if somehow Vader hires Boba Fett to track down the Ghost Crew, and he disintegrates one of them, giving meaning to that line about no disintegrations in The Empire Strikes Back. Now sure, the odds of Boba Fett disintegrating a member of the Ghost Crew on a Disney XD show are pretty low, but I still love the idea. And one day, I'd really love to know the story behind that classic line, one way or the other. Next up, I'd have to put Commander Cody on this list, because if you're like me and you loved the Clone Wars, that scene where Cody so quickly orders his troopers to open fire on General Kenobi in Revenge of the Sith is even more memorable now because of that show, and how it not only developed the character of Cody, but his camaraderie with Obi-Wan. And again, thanks to Clone Wars, we know that the clones had chips in their heads that made them betray their Jedi generals. But I'd really love to learn what became of Cody after that fateful order was given. Last, though certainly not least, would be Barriss Offee. What happened to her after she set up Ahsoka in Season 5 of Clone Wars, in my opinion, is one of the bigger mysteries that show left us with. I kind of assumed Palpatine might take an interest in her after that, and while waiting for Season 2 of Rebels, that was who some thought Seventh Sister would turn out to be, which would have been great considering the past between Barriss and Ahsoka, but alas, that was not meant to be. Which leaves us all wondering when or where might these two encounter each other again at some point, and I think it would have been great to have seen it in a season of Rebels at some point. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about how Rebels last season is being handled, and if something else is not only on the way, but maybe closer than we think. Also, what characters would you have liked to have seen show up in Rebels? Let me know in the comments below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.